Hey folks, welcome back. Beautiful afternoon out here in central Ontario. I'm taking full advantage of an unseasonably warm winter, and I'm gonna split some wood. In just a minute here, once the Takeuchi TB15, the old vintage iron there, once that thing warms up, I'm gonna use that in order to pick up these logs. We'll buck them to length and then we'll fire it onto the wood splitter. The wood splitter here I'll talk about in a little bit. That's the Eastonmade Ultra. If you've been around the channel, you know how that goes. Pretty much consistent, fast, and efficient are the words to describe it. So I'm looking forward to using that again today. So without further ado, let's go. Just as we wait for the wood splitter to warm up here, I wanted to show you something that I know some of you will mention in the comments. As I was cutting, you probably saw the bar start to drift towards one side of the log. And have a look at what the result is. You guys see that cut right there? See how it swoops like this? Well, that's an indicator to me that the tooth on one side is not at the same sharpness as the tooth on the opposite side. And because of that, the bar tends to drift one way or another. Usually what I would do, I would stop, I would go back, I'd grab the hand file and just touch up the teeth on both sides. I like to make sure there's the same number of strokes on each side of the tooth. But anyways, such is life. If you were to take that piece, it's still going to burn the same as any other piece of wood. The trouble is, if you have too big of a swoop, when you're trying to split it, it wants to pop and do all kinds of funny stuff, basically move. So I try to get as square of a cut as possible. And obviously you got to have a sharp chain in order to accomplish that. I'd say that's a pretty good afternoon. We filled about 1.5 IBC cages of loose stacked firewood, or loose thrown firewood, and that hardwood that I threw in there wasn't really the best stuff. It had a ton of knots, not very straight at all. And so what I did partway through, you would have seen I switched from the 4-way wedge and I went up to the 2-way wedge. And it's not because the wood splitter won't push the wood through that 4-way splitter, it certainly will. It's just I get more consistent size pieces when I can manipulate it with the 2-way wedge. That's just because all the knots in there, and not the most ideal stuff. Like, have a look at that piece right there, right? So 2-way wedge worked really, really well. The comfort on this thing is great. This makes it really nice to be out here and splitting wood, whereas if I didn't have something like this, maybe I was using my old wood splitter, I'd probably have a sore shoulder at this point from doing the old recoil exercise, and I'd certainly be still at it because that thing is super slow. Really a lot of fun to use this Ultra here. So what I'll do next is, probably not today, but in another day, once I fill up that cage, I'll come in with the forks on the tractor. I'll pick these up, move them down there. They'll sit down there for a few months. They'll dry. This wood I'll probably use in a year or two's time. And one great thing, while I think of it, about loose throwing the wood is I've only touched the wood once to get it in here split. Now I only have to touch it one more time for a total of 2 times in order for it to get into my wood stove in my home to heat it. So one of the reasons I like to loose throw as opposed to stack. And some of you guys may have noticed that some of the wood was falling off the table as I was splitting it. What's happening out here is it's getting warmer and warmer as the day goes on, and this snowpack on the ground is melting. So my wood splitter is starting to tilt and go downhill. This is a natural hill. I had it somewhat level with my bucket on my tractor, but now that it's melting, I think I'm going to have to reposition the splitter. So that's one reason. And the top of the deck still had some residual ice that was melting as well. So speaking of fun things here, the mini excavator, this is turning out to be one of the more fun things I get to use around here. I'm really enjoying anytime I get some seat time, and well, I'm really looking forward to when the ground thaws out so I can get out in the woods a bit more and do some more project cleanups and all that sort of thing. But this extension here on the thumb, this is turning out to be a great thing. You would have seen me today. None of the logs were looking like they were going to slip out. And I think much of that comes down to this extra little tooth that sticks out. That rust there, I'll have to wipe off and put some primer on there. But the tooth sticking down really helps, I notice, with the bigger logs. And with myself getting a bit more seat time, I'm not having to think as hard with all the controls, and I'm able to manipulate those logs a little bit easier. One thing's for certain though, when it gets warmer out and there's still a snow layer on the ground, those tracks on this Mini X aren't really good for much. They're ready just to slide down the hill. So I got to be especially careful when I'm working on a bit of a slope, which I am here. Anyways, I got one other idea that I want to run past you guys. Maybe you can give me your feedback down in the comments. You'll notice the wood splitter here, I have to bring it out here in order to use it. But to bring it out here, I have to have something to tow it. In the wintertime, I could use my tractor, which I typically do. I could also use the ATV, but that's not overly convenient, just because I then have the wood splitter, I have the Mini X, and then I have a third piece of equipment. I'm looking to add a hitch onto my Mini X, and I'm thinking I'm going to add it somewhere down here. What do you guys think? Anyone had any experience with that? Any tips on how I should mount it down here? The reason I'm thinking to add it onto the blade is the blade can be hydraulically controlled up and down. Well, that would be convenient because I could just sort of drive up here, use the blade controls, and just lift it until it picks up the hitch on the wood splitter, and then I could drive it back into the shed where it goes. I don't know if that's a good idea, a bad idea. Maybe one more idea. You guys can let me know if it's silly. What if I put a hitch on here, or a ball rather, so that I can use the boom with that wood splitter? I don't know. Give me your input down below. I'd like to hear it. I've got all kinds of ideas, but not all of them are good ones, especially if I don't have experience with it. So anyways, that's going to do it for me here today. Glad you guys joined me. If you could do me that big favor, give her the old like-a-roo. Make sure you subscribe, and I'll see you next time.